and we can go online.
Okay.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar session number 4 today. It is a pleasure to have with us 4 executive panelists who will be debating on the new normal and the aftermath of the COVID-19. First of all, welcome to Unwha Choi, Minds Group CEO. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. Good morning.
Gordon Dudley from RDI Worldwide CEO. Thank you very much. Michel Martinez, Lotte-Nestle Korea CFO. And Erwan Vilfeu. Good morning. And Erwan Vilfeu, SKBC Chairman, and Zuellig Pharma Korea President. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us for this session. The program today, after a short introduction, Gordon Dudley will be presenting, sharing with us a presentation of the new normal. And I will continue moderating this session with a series of questions. It will be followed by a Q&A, so everyone can ask your question on the chat screen. So while the COVID is still spreading in many countries, Korea has been a great example on dealing with the virus, responding almost immediately after the first case on January 20, setting up a testing regime and applying the real-time frequent information dissemination platform to the public. Nevertheless, the social and financial impacts are unprecedented. Since the beginning of the crisis, companies have been forced to rethink their business models and strategies, deploying radical preventive and cost-effective working measures, implementing teleworking, flexible work, splitting teams, working shift, partial unemployment, and in some cases, laying off employees. On the brighter side, it has been forced companies to create, innovate, relying more on technologies, pushing forward their agenda in digitalization, for example. In fact, these radical changes have opened up a brand new world of great opportunities, pushing everyone to profoundly rethink the way we work, travel, and consume. Today, with our guests, we will try to understand the new normal, its impact on companies, management, employees, and its psychological effect on people. So Gordon, I will share with you now my screen, then you can make your presentation. Here it is.
All right. Hello, everybody. Let me just enter into screen sharing mode. So if I could just get confirmation that you can see my slides.
Yes, I can see the slides.
Excellent, excellent, great. So thank you for the warm introduction, Frederic. My name is Gordon Dudley, CEO of RDI Worldwide, and I'm going to be taking you through just a very short presentation about some of the considerations that we face right now when it comes to people perspectives, both in Korea, the region, and beyond. So first of all, I want to just give a bit of background as to my kind of perspective and our company in terms of what we are kind of trying to achieve. And it is really summarized by this statement that what if your company created a culture that meant work doesn't have to feel like hard work? So that is our kind of aspirational mission, and it is our belief. And so what I want to take you through over the next 10 minutes or so is just 5 key trends which we have seen emerging and perhaps having greater effects since the COVID-19 crisis. So first of all, let's jump right into it. Digitalization. This is absolutely at the top of everybody's agenda right now for both very physical infrastructure reasons and also for more long-term strategic reasons. This famous tweet came out a few months ago asking the question, who led the digital transformation of your company? Was it A, the CEO, B, the CTO, whose of course true job it should be, or was it C, COVID-19? So we see that perhaps COVID-19 has had one of the effects to really accelerate the process of digitalization in companies. This has come in the form of virtual business. So of course, as we are unable to be co-located, companies are now operating a virtual business, doing the same business online, but also the new business, the new online business. And so that has had a change for people when it comes to how they run their business. It has also led to a growth in HRIRS. So that's the Human Resource Information System, the way in which HR as a function of your company is, operating and cataloging and managing the information that is located within the company. And whereas previously there might have been a lot of paperwork to be done, now a lot of that has very quickly become digitalized. And so we've seen the rapid growth of the use of some of the companies in that area, SAP SuccessFactors, Workday, etc., who are really growing in this area. And then when it comes to HR operations, that has also become digitalized. So the process that HR is operating in have necessarily become much more digitalized in the recent months. E-learning. So when it comes to how to train and develop your people, that has also had to go virtual. So we've seen e-learning becoming ever more necessary. We've seen a conversion of a lot of subjects onto virtual training environments, and of course the challenge of some which simply are still not convertible, and we see further developments in that area. So let's go on to the second one, and this is definitely a hot topic right now, which is diversity and inclusion. I follow on Instagram this rather popular Korean cartoonist by the name of Yang Chiki. So you see he has over 135,000 followers, and he is illustrating some of the challenges that we are facing right now when it comes to diversity and inclusion, not just in Korea, but around the world. He recently has started making some of his cartoons in English, which is great to see. They're globalized. And so, this cartoon where the team leader is kind of jokingly saying there's always at least one douchebag on every team, but we must be an exception. And of course, everybody in the team is just looking at him and thinking, yes, it's you, yes, it's you. And so this is one example of how diversity of mind, of thinking, of age or gender, sexuality or race is very much been challenged by COVID-19 at this time. Some survey data shows that recently that it's being talked about within co-workers. So whether you are as a management level aware or not, this is something that is being discussed by your people. 52% say absolutely, 36% importantly say yes but not enough, and only 12% saying no, not at all. So in the terms of HR perspective, well, HR tech is making it easier to reduce bias. So we are seeing more blind recruitment going on. We are seeing a better use of systems to try to reduce upfront the type of discrimination that happens on all kinds of ways. Virtual working is of course breaking down borders. It's now, if it's not necessary for somebody to be in the office in Seoul, they can be in Busan, they can be in Daejeon, they can be somewhere else, then of course we perhaps can see a greater mixing of backgrounds and different types of groups being able to be included. So that's also one of the positives that's come out of this. And so we see COVID-19 essentially is driving the D&I agenda more and more. Moving on to number 3, employer branding. This is a topic which basically, from what I can see working with my clients, is either a blue ocean or a red ocean. Either operating in an area where you feel that you can hire everybody that you possibly can, that your employer brand is strong and attractive, you have more than enough applicants to your company, or on the other hand, it's empty and desolate in the sense of not being able to find the right kind of talent for your company. And so both have their challenges, and that's why employer branding is also incredibly important right now. Of course, given the crisis, some people are saying, who's thinking about employer branding now? We've got much more important things to deal with. But of course, the reality is, if we're talking about a new normal, then that is an opportunity that people will face. And we have seen that it has been a bit more than just CSR. So in the past, employer branding has been considered perhaps kind of CSR next level, but in fact it's much more than that, and it really can save costs in the business if you have a very good employer brand which allows you to attract the talents that you need. We see that it is actually having a bit of a polarizing effect when senior management are using social media. We see some examples in the recent months of people going onto social media, perhaps letting their own personal views be known in a certain kind of extreme way, and that having a negative effect. And conversely, others who are coming out and standing up and being proactive and showing that the values that they stand for are very much aligned with their company. And so that's had a very positive effect. So a polarizing effect when it comes to employer branding. Moving swiftly on to trend number 4, compensation and benefits. This is, of course, a very important topic, no matter your industry, no matter your company. And we also see some big effects coming from the COVID-19 situation. I want to just do a kind of retrospective here on this point. This is some data which comes from Mercer 5 years ago. So in 2015, they were looking at current situation, 2015, where do we see compensation benefit going to be in 5 years? Now, everybody who got asked the interview question 5 years ago, where do you see yourself in 5 years, of course, got the question totally wrong, because we didn't know that we would be living in this new world. But it's interesting to see that some of these trends have actually come to be. So employees as business partners, the breaking down of the employee contract has been a big trend over the last few years. Market pay within global levels, so a more of a equality when it comes to a global basis, when it comes to pay. In terms of fixed pay versus bonus, we are also seeing a greater transition towards more variable compensation. And lastly, most organizations offer variable pay in 2015, and now we're becoming the norm of that kind of flexibility within pay. So we can see that there were some trends suggested, and some of those have already come to be when it comes to compensation and benefits. And so last of all, the 5th trend that I want to present as a kind of discussion starter, a prompt for our discussion going into the rest of the session, is sustainability. And this is an interesting one. When we talk about where we were in Q1 was all about contingency. We were making rapid emergency plans. We were talking about how we can deal with a business, how can we move forward. Whereas now in Q3, we're talking much more about sustainability. Some of the things which have changed are here to stay. And we need to now look at how can we continue to work this into our ongoing business. So quite a change in just the last few months. Though most people tend to feel that it's June now and it's amazing that we're already halfway through the year. So in that sense, the time has flown. We see that partnerships have been forged in tough times. People who have worked together in new and different ways have been able to deepen their partnerships. And so that's definitely something which we can see as a positive benefit coming out of this. And of course, maybe there are some contracts which we have decided not to renew, because we have seen that when times are tough, that we actually can't work together anymore. Localization, resource minimization. Without business travel, without direct import, we've seen a lot of transition for local sourcing, both when it comes to people, but also raw materials. That's an ongoing trend that we see becoming ever stronger in this new normal that we are facing right now. And finally, work-life integration. So feeling that people should be more sustainable in their jobs and their careers, integrating their work into their life, as opposed to achieving this kind of work-life balance, which suggests that the two are mutually exclusive. So this is another wider trend that we can see going forward. Those are some kind of generation gaps, which maybe we can talk more about in detail in the discussion. But I'm going to wrap it up there. Like I said at the start, I'm with RDI and looking forward to having some lively discussions with the panelists and the participants that we have on the call here. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Gordon. Thank you very much for your presentation. If anyone would like to maybe to comment on some point of the presentation. No? So maybe I can start to ask some question. I think transition is quite important. You point out transition, and it comes as probably one of the hardest tasks for employees. It's the transition. And so my first question to everyone is, how did flexible work basically has been for your employee, this transition to flexible work? How did it work in your organization? And what are the takeaways?
Okay, maybe I can start.
Yes.
For Lotte-Nestle Korea, this is a company I work with, we had basically 3 periods. The first period was March and April, where we were forced to work from home, 100%. The second period is May, June, where we have been applying a hybrid working system, shift A, shift B, 1 day at home, 4 days in the office, a bit of flexibility here. And the third period is the one we are preparing now, is to move to a permanent hybrid organization where on a permanent basis, our employees will work a couple of days from home. And I think the COVID-19, we could never imagine that working from home will work. And this was the positive thing of the coronavirus. And it has forced us to move out of our comfort zone. And this is good because now we know that we can make it and we know that we can bring a better life balance for employees and we can bring some positive aspect of it.
Yes, that's correct. Erwan, maybe you want to comment on that as well. What did you do from your side and how employees basically reacted to this transition to flexible work?
So the interesting thing on our side is that we plan the renovation of the head office starting mid-December. So mid-December or before mid-December, we plan to get everybody at home for 3 weeks, gave them some laptops, organized all the teams. So when the crisis came up, we were already at home. So everything had been tested and we could continue to work from home, which was good. The interesting thing is we designed the office with the idea to bring this change of allowing people to work from home with flexible teams. The office we made, and maybe we can do a session another time here, but we put some formal desks for only 60% of the people. The rest is a big lounge and counting on the fact people would be a lot outside. We didn't need as many formal desks as employees we had working every day in the office. And there was a lot of resistance before doing the change for many more traditional people were not sure it would work. So that was, I mean, this forced us into the new reality quite quickly, and it worked pretty well. So we're back now for the past two months on this new normal where people are half working from home from the office. We're allowed to get 3 days at home. And actually there was a very interesting debate with my HR director of a few more traditional people that say, okay, we can go for 3 days at work, 3 days at home, but it shouldn't be on Monday or it shouldn't be on Friday, which made me laugh because we could see there was still some work of whether you want to trust or not your employees. But now we are on this new normal with 3 days at home allowed. It doesn't mean that people take 3 days every week. They organize themselves with their head of department. But I think we didn't see any drop of productivity and people are pretty happy.
Okay, yeah, that's what.
Gordon, I mean, great presentation, thank you. But I think your last slide, you went very quickly, but it could be interesting to come back on it where you see the differences by generations in terms of acceptance of this new way to work.
Yes, this is one of the questions we will have almost next. The third question is more like a generational, so we will definitely we'll come back to it. You were pointing out productivity. I mean, if everyone have, like Erwan, have a problem of productivity or not, no problem. I mean, did you see change in productivity? Anyone? In the case of Erwan, you didn't face any problem of productivity, right?
No, not at all. We do jobs. We have some call centers as well with nurses calling the patients. So that was probably one of the most critical one. The other thing to manage also is how do you communicate that throughout the company? Because obviously inside of the warehouses or people on the field, they would not have the same privilege. So you have to be cautious as well in terms of communication to make sure that you explain this is only for people in the office. And it's not a privilege as such, it's a different way to work, but we're not giving 3 days of holidays to people to work from the office.
All right, okay. Gordon, if you want to comment also, what is your experience when it comes to work from home and flexible work with your team, and what you have seen maybe around you, because you are meeting a lot of CEOs and people around you?
Yeah, so for me, in terms of the actual ability to carry out work, we were using a lot of cloud-based services for our management. That has now become, basically 100%, whereas I would say it was probably only at about 50%. So we have, done that ourselves in our business. And I would also say that ability of being now fully virtual has allowed some of our contractors to work at the times which are more convenient to them. So rather than necessarily feeling that they need to stick to core working hours, they are actually, through their own personal choice, able to work at times which they feel most productive. And so I think that is definitely a good thing that has come out of it. When I reflect on perhaps clients and other companies, I think there are some very big questions coming out now about, do we need this amount of office space? Mm-hmm. And if in fact our people can be more productive working from home or just at the place of their choosing, and using the office as the place that I work when I need to do a certain kind of work, then I think there are some massive changes that we're going to be seeing with the actual structure of central business districts, as companies don't need to have 3, 5, 10 floors of a building in prime downtown real estate. They can cut that to maybe 10%, 20%, 30%, depending on the business situation, and have flexible. And so that's, I think, also going to be a massive change that we see coming more in coming months in the future.
Yeah, I think that's
we felt the same here. For individual tasks, we did not lose any productivity. I believe we actually gained some productivity. But we also see that for face-to-face meetings or for group meetings, coming to the office seems to be more efficient. And this is why we believe that the optimum organization will be this hybrid organization. When you are working on your own, you work from at home on your individual tasks. And when you need to meet or have a conference or meetings, then you come to the office to meet your colleagues or customers or suppliers.
Unwha, are you sharing also the same?
Well, I mean, that I've always operated independently, sort of running a home office all these years. Although years ago, I worked for a company. So I know what it's like to be in an office environment and under that system. But for me, I think what's interesting is, although I've really gotten used to doing work in this manner, maybe the people who are used to working for corporations, they may have to adjust and be more self-responsible how to handle schedules and allot time while they're at home. And at home, also at the beginning of coronavirus, I think you had everyone at home. staying, right? Children or high school students or whatever. So I think people had to figure out, how do I adjust focusing my time with work while other things are going on? And some people may not have that kind of space. So I think it's really kind of looking into that. And by now, I mean, listening to Michel and Erwan and Gordon, that people have found sort of a stability in how to do that. And that's what I see. And I think this will continue. And I saw an article this morning about Lotte, the actual Lotte group, that they are permanently placing, and I think that's what I kind of heard you, Michel, about your company, that Lotte is permanently placing 1 day of staying home every week. And I thought, you know, that's like one move, because Lotte is a very, very conservative company. And it's interesting how they've announced that part.
So yes, Michel, you are talking about you are rescaling, right, your company. I mean, people will have the choice to go to work or to work from home, right?
So what we want to do starting July is to have at least 1 day per week working from home on a permanent basis. And I believe this is just the beginning of changing the way we work. But it is not the only step. I think it will come with flexible working hours, maybe some unpaid leave for young employees who are willing to spend 2 or 3 weeks in summer with their friends in the US. It comes with a lot of changes in the organization. And I think this will eventually benefit the organization. And coming back to what Gordon was saying before about this employer branding, if a company managed to have a smooth transition and implement these new ways of working, the employer branding will improve and therefore will become more attractive for young talents to join the company.
All right. And Erwan, for in your case, what are you planning? I mean, you're reskilling, you have a new office now. If you scale it down, and what are your plans?
Actually, we have less desks, only desks for 60% of the people that we brought. A lot of people from a second office. We consolidated kind of 2 offices in one. But there are really questions also behind how you're going to allow people to meet at some point. So we have a digital agency inside of the company, and here we're talking about millennials and people constantly working on their screen. So we're trying something different with them, which is they have to be in office on Wednesday. That's the only day where they have to be in the office. The rest of the week they can work from home. And it seems to be working pretty well with them. But you have to have at some point 1 day where people need to meet together. And the question, to follow up on what you were saying, Michel, is how also do you make it happen to allow people to meet? Because actually you can answer, Michel, but when you say you want to give 1 free days, it's going to be the same day for everybody at the same time or not? Because I think we see also with only 1 day, people start to plan some meetings here and there, and it becomes quite difficult then to get this 1 day happening.
Yeah, you need to establish rules, otherwise it will be chaos. And like you have done to say, for instance, on Wednesday, people come to the office to probably have face-to-face meetings. I think it's a clear rule, simple but clear.
Yeah. So what we did is we gave some flexible time as well. So people have to be between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. in the office. And then there's some flexibility in arrival and leave time. And we also put some rules in terms of preventing to put some meetings before 10 or after 4 p.m., which also gives some time for people to work on their personal topics or mails, not to have too many meetings all the time. Something I think we want to be cautious, want to observe. One of the problems I've seen too many people having is all these mails, these ping pong mails where people are not really solving the thing fast, just taking the phones, walking and talking to the other employees, and then you end up having ping pong mails, which are not really getting things to progress very fast. That's something I think we'll observe to make sure that having more work from home is not going to increase that, because then it's easier to just send back the mail and then you go to another topic and things are slowing down. that's something we have to be cautious.
All right. Okay. Also, when it comes to flexible work, we can talk about also more like project-based, because also, I mean, flexible work means you will have part of the team working at home, but also for some project, you don't need necessarily one employee doing this task. So I've heard, of course, this new normal will bring an era of freelancer working independently from home for companies. Is it something that you have explored or you have discussed internally? More like project-based freelancers or third-party freelancers? Is this something that people are discussing or not really?
I think on our sites, the big debate we had with all the managers is how do you manage your people, and stop managing them, taking care of how long they spend in the office, but more look at the performance and the projects. And then you need to set some task and performance review. And here, I think we're still learning, but we see it depends really from the employees. Some employees seems to work very well if you have a weekly performance review. That's perfectly fine. With some other managers, we discussed, and some employees have some difficulties if you give them only tasks to cover and to assess every week. It's not working, so they tend to have a morning call with their employees and says, okay, what are we going to do today? What do we want to achieve? And then they let them work. But I think it's a case by case, and we're also learning how to, on both sides, both on the manager sides and employee sides, how to deal with this new way to work.
All right. Okay. Anyone want to comment? Otherwise, I'll jump to the next question. Mostly, I mean, more at the management level, those older generation are reacting to the same at these changes. You were saying about adaptation, and maybe some older generation are probably more uneasy with the fact that people are working from home. And is it something that you have faced, generation problem somehow, or flexibility?
Absolutely. For Lotte-Nestle Korea, we can see a clear difference between the younger and the older generation. The younger generation really want to embrace these new ways of working, while the older generation just try to push back and don't want to hear about it. But again, it's not only about the working from home, it's also about the flexible working hours, the unpaid leave. It's all this, or just like you were saying before, Frederic, about project-based rather than be on a permanent basis and checking if the employee has been working from 8:30 to 5:30, right? Mm-hmm. So it's all these new ways of working that the millennials are definitely asking for, and the older generation are trying to push back, at least in my company.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Erwan, or maybe Gordon, if you, or Una, if you have any comment on that, this generation.
I mean, I think for me, what's interesting to think about is, yes, I would probably think there is some difference in the level of acceptance or the level of resistance towards accepting not only working from home, but being able to talk to each other through video conference rather than face-to-face, etc. But at the same time, we, with COVID-19, are really facing physical change, aren't we? So whether you're older generation or not, they have to adapt. There is really no choice. And they may make some noise about it, but bottom line is they cannot really resist because it's all about work. And they would rather be working than not working. So there may be a lot of complaints about it, but at the end of the day, everyone has adopted and will adapt. So I think that's interesting to see that there will be less of a generation gap. And I would think that also maybe the generation that would be having more difficulty would be around late 50s, right? Early 60s. Because even those Koreans who are in their 50s now, they're the X generation, aren't they? So they're very used to internet and the computer and apps. And so I would think that they don't have as much of resistance per se. But maybe there's a difficulty in not being able to see each other and talk because a lot of communication has to be either done written or through internet, which is a bit different from when you do it face to face. So That's what I would think.
Yeah, like maybe Gordon was saying, I mean, when it comes to generation, of course, or Michel was saying, when it comes to generation, millennials are more, I would say, used to work independently with technology and with small monitoring, compared to older generation who needs to keep a certain control, especially at the managerial level.
Right.
And when maybe you lose this control,
Right.
while people are working from home, it can, yeah, you can probably have a feeling of kind of disorientation somehow, or feeling left over somehow. That could be. But we will discuss probably more about this more psychological effect. Erwan, maybe you want to comment also on that?
Yeah, I think we had some resistance again when we started to expose the projects on our side, because we designed that before the COVID, and I could feel some resistance from mostly from managers that would not trust their employees, or think they would stop working, or it was like giving holidays. But as Unwha was saying, we were forced into it with the COVID, so there was no choice, and we find out that it was working, and they were forced to reinvent the way they were managing the people. So eventually the COVID really helped us to accelerate in that direction and change the culture.
Gordon, also from your side, what have you seen or heard? Yeah.
When it comes to generations, you know, we talk about digital natives, the generation who grew up being totally at home in a digital world. You know, I look at my 3-year-old son who you know, taps on the big screen TV because all he knows is touch screens. He doesn't know keyboards or anything else, right? And you know, in between time, we have digital immigrants. You know, people who you know, I'm the last year of millennial, you know, late 30s, and so I was in a kind of transition generation, but now fully productive. And so I think we have to be flexible to the generations who didn't grow up with that, right? It's only natural to for some people to be a bit resistant to change. People are comfortable with what they know, and often you know, uncertainty can be scary. Now, there's two kinds of people in the world. There are those who are willing to adapt to the change, and there are those who you know, not only resist the change, but are scared of the change, but also resist the change. So, but I think there is a responsibility for companies, you know, if they do suddenly say, okay, you know, work from home and we expect you to be productive. If that is something which for certain demographics is totally fine, they're comfortable, you know, working out of a coffee shop, you know, doing just as much work, or you know, any kind of flexible way, it's not a big change. For others, you know, they maybe have a desktop computer only in their office for you know, 20-30 years, and now they're being told that they can't use that. So I think there is a responsibility for companies. One company that I'm aware of, a gaming company, they actually provided a kind of cash benefit to each of their employees, I think around $200 to $300, purposely, specifically for setting up their home office. So if you needed to buy a new bit of equipment, a new office chair that you're going to be spending the entire day in at home, for example, then I think that's a really good way to help people transition. And more than just being comfortable, then there has to be some training on these new systems that people are using. So I think, you know, if we want to try to keep our staff productive and keep them as long as possible, because there is, of course, certain you know, value from the long tenure employees, then we also have to make sure that they can be comfortable and we provide enough support for them in this big transition period.
Yeah, sure. I think, yeah, I mean, of course, leaders should take their staff to a new journey and teach them and coach them how to take the best of this difficult time. And so when it comes to, of course, we talk about working from home, we talk about many different topics here, but what is the psychological effect? I mean, it can be a personal question to all of you. I mean, from day one, when you started to work from home, what was your feeling, first of all? Because of course you have huge responsibility, company, staff working for you. What was your feeling? And then what was the general feeling for your team members? I don't know who want to start.
Maybe I should go first again.
Yep.
Well, it's a new world, right? So the first few days you are a bit destabilized. You need to reorganize yourself. You need to adopt this way. But eventually you discover that it's a new world with the benefits, for instance, less commuting time. Maybe you can dress casual. It's all maybe less makeup time for the ladies. So you improve, you enjoy an improved work-life balance. And once you have a taste of it, of course, it's difficult to go back to the previous model. So that's on the plus side. But there are also some negative aspects. If you are at home the whole day and you don't have a chance to talk to any human being during the whole day, maybe you can feel isolated. And this is not good for the long term. And this is why you also need to find on Wednesdays, like for Erwan, or on specific days, to have face-to-face meetings or meet in the office, to have this social interaction with your colleagues and peers and line managers. And I think once you master to have the right balance between these two organizations, work at home and work in the office, this is when you have the optimum work-life balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really about the balance, right?
Yes. And I think Erwan said a key word before, I think is trust. We need to trust our employees that they will do the right thing. Of course, we need to guide them, but there must be trust. And it doesn't mean that we will not control that the work is done or not anymore in the future. It's just that the control will be different. Today, the old-fashioned to control is to make sure that the employee is at 8:30 in the office and leaves at 5:30. In the future, I believe it will be more about, is the work done, yes or no? And this is where it goes back to what we are saying with some project-based teams or contractors or freelancers that come for one project, they do the project, deliver the job, and then move on. And maybe the whole organization will move more to this kind of project-based and organization.
It is right that the key will be the right message from the CEOs who understand the new world very quickly and who adapt it as quickly as possible, I guess. But of course, not knowing the right road from the beginning. So you have to adjust permanently the new road to reach your target. So it's rather very interesting. I mean, with people, I mean, the way to communicate, but also in terms of technology, am I able to take the best, I mean, to reach the best of it. Erwan, maybe you want to comment as well, or?
I think, yeah, I agree again, trust is critical, and it's very easy to ask people to come 8 hours in the office, but it's not really going to ensure some efficiency in the way projects are done. But I think we have to create this. I was reading the comment from Rito on the chat saying that if we need some reconnection week at some point, probably we need to force people to meet at some point for real. Otherwise, the distance will gradually increase. And I think also the other thing which is important is creating the culture of the company, and sometimes good to get people to meet together. So it's really about being in between, but forcing people to be together at some point.
Right. And more on the psychological effect as well. I think Una, you wanted to share with us a presentation, right? Or
sure. What I wanted to maybe, once I talked to you, Frederic, about this topic and asked me to be a panelist, right. I was thinking more from my work and where I come from, dealing with many organizational culture and the perspective on what has changed and what is the new normal. And you brought the topic up about new balance. So I wanted to share just a little bit about my perspective. It's a bit of a statement.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So as we talked about it, I mean, the impact that COVID-19 has brought is at different levels and different issues at not only corporate, but in the world level, as we all know it, right? And one of the big one, obviously, we've been talking about is in the physical environment. And it really made us to be more aware of that, how we have to be very self-responsible and how we may not have appreciated the importance of the interaction and being able to be in touch with people and face-to-face. And I think along with the impact of work environment change, I'm positive we will look at and face all the rest of the changes and able to manage it and reshape it, as you all talked about it already, specifically in corporations. But I think at the same time, we need to think about what is that new balance. And physically, you've talked about it, the changes you're making, regulations you're thinking about, adjustments you're bringing in forth. But what I wanted to kind of bring in is in a different perspective of what's happening that really affects how we look at what is happening in the world and how we look at the values that we have. For example, the George Floyd incident was an interesting for me, and I'm sure it was an impact for everybody. That was one incident, I think, that brought forth topic about how we really never dealt with racism. And that's a cue, because coronavirus, what has brought onto us is for us to be drastically all of a sudden look at events and incidents in a different light. And in Korea, it's the same way. The coronavirus has opened up issues of the society that we've talked about here and there. For example, like power tripping or bullying, or the impact of certain churches and cults on the society, child abuse. All of these really severe, deeply rooted problems have come up. And by looking at them, I think the whole society has faced it, and it will try to resolve it on one way or another. And at the same time, looking at organizational culture in Korea, I think it will improve, because up to now, there was still a lot of authoritarian culture, a lot of hierarchical pressure, and that employees have to be obeying what the seniors or hierarchical bosses are telling them. But in a less contact world, more social distancing, I think Koreans will spend less emotional energy with each other, but really focus on work, right? So that will bring more changes into organizational culture that you will face in your organizations. And also another thing I think we've really felt is that we realize we're witnessing how the unstable structure of the society we have created is. And that we have to really look at our established patterns and how do we change those established patterns in dealing with each other. And I think this goes back to diversity or inclusion issues. This goes to psychology of the people living today. And that, I think, will lead us to think about how that in this time and period, it is really a time of shifting our consciousness. And what I'm trying to say on that is, right now, the new topic is the vaccine, and look at how people are already talking about who will get the vaccine first. So rather than all the countries, the leaders of countries focusing on standing for their values, they're really thinking about how it benefit of each other, of themselves. And corporations also need to think about how to really live the values that you have put forth. The values of corporations of being fair, being, trust, integrity, and all those important values that are there advocating, but you have to think about how do you live it, especially in a long distance, working away from each other. And the final thought that I had was, as an individual, I think it's important to give some time for introspection, to think about what we're really going through internally, and how are we looking at our outworn patterns of thinking, and how our responses are to others, and how to relate to others. So I think in the level of corporations and at work, how you work with each other has been kind of laid out. But I thought that it's important to think about what do we really identify ourselves and how do we look at the changes that are taking place in our mind and in our environment.
Thank you very much. Very well said. Anyone wants to comment as well? We have another 10 minutes. If everyone also has questions, you can send your question and our panelists will answer. Anyone want to comment?
Sure, I can.
Yeah.
I think some of the things which we've touched on already in terms of the psychological effect are really meaningful. You know, on the one hand, some people being told, all right, work from home, but you have to log in at by 9:01, and we have software which will be monitoring you, how active you are, how, you know, the time that you spend online, and all of this kind of control. And I think that's lacking trust. It's definitely lacking empowerment, and that has definitely negative effects. And I think conversely, you know, we have seen maybe even some very previously conservative organizations being forced to adopt these kind of new ways. And so actually people in some sense kind of being emancipated as they feel that they now don't have to be in back-to-back meetings, which they feel they don't need to contribute to or have anything to do. And I think, you know, if meetings for a lot of people are rather negative, they feel that they have too many meetings that are pointless. And I think that's also been psychologically, people have thought, why are we having this meeting? And if we're going to have this meeting, what should the agenda be? What do we want to get out of it? And I think if that, you know, if you are in a job where you have to have a lot of meetings, coming out of the meeting feeling that was time well spent, that was, I'm glad that everybody was there, we achieved something, as opposed to the constant feeling of, oh, another meeting, what's my next meeting, and then meetings about meetings. You know, the psychological effect is so different. And so hopefully, I think that if that is a wider effect, which will continue, I think can have great impact on the psychological welfare of everybody experiencing that.
Yeah, I think it's correct. I mean, going back to the relaxation, to the facts, not wasting time. And I think, of course, from home, you don't waste time. You don't have to commute 1 or 2 hours per day to go to your office. So you can spend your 2 hours learning. You can spend your 2 hours working, efficiency on project or things you're doing. Also, it goes also for travel. People with definitely less travel. Knowing brand manager, traveling the world just to visit the point of sales, it's probably something that also will change. So this is another aspect, also the environment, people feeling not only responsible for the environment, but also adjusting the way they work to be more effective. I mean, today doesn't make any sense probably to travel 6 months a year when actually you can talk to people via Zoom or social, I mean, all these application and technologies. So maybe I will switch this question maybe to the CEOs. What do you think about the trips? What about the new way to work? Maybe travel less.
I think it's a good moment to review a lot of things we've been doing forever, which probably didn't make a lot of sense. So sometimes too much traveling. Another thing, I mean, Gordon, you were talking about the meetings, but also it's not only the quantity of meetings, but who do we invite in the meetings, and changing also the way we structure the meetings. I mean, also in Zuellig, we've been trying to stop using PowerPoint and just get people to sit and talk and just using one pager and describing the problem. It's very hard. It takes time to change because people want to stick to their PowerPoint. They feel comfortable reading their slides, but we lose so much time preparing and reading the slides is not really exchanging. So I mean, managing the people and looking at the performance and all the time in the office, doing less meeting and more efficient meeting, less PowerPoint and more exchange between the people, and less traveling. These are all things that I think makes a lot of sense in changing bad habits we accumulated all these years. And they are really bad habits because you don't even see that it's not really efficient. You just want to do like the others. And probably I was looking at the comment from Sean, is probably one of the key things is if you change all of that and you get people working from home, how you make sure people still engage and get to know each other, and how do you build the culture of the company behind the team building is the whole values and culture of the company, which is critical. And I think, Sean, to your point, that's why we want to have at least a few days where people all have to be in the office. What we do on our side is we have more frequent webinars where people are talking to all the employees, so some town halls where we discuss about the company and more communication, ways to exchange. But yeah, we have to recreate these moments. We couldn't, unfortunately, and I think that's something missing with COVID, have large gatherings. So I think we should have more large gathering with people meeting all together in more social moments. Unfortunately, that's something we cannot do, but that's something that would be quite useful to continue to build some team building, collaboration, and the values of the company.
Thank you very much, Erwan. So you replied to Sean's question, correct? Yes. Also a comment from Su Young Kang. COVID really accelerated change in our society. Personally, I think we will live with COVID for a while, update to several decades. So hopefully not. But yes, we are not really sure what's going on now, especially with a speech of second wave coming and new cases everywhere. So anyone wants to say something to close this session? We're reaching almost to the end. Or any question, anyone?
Maybe just briefly before the close, just a perspective on Sean's question. You know, if you're continuing to be in a virtual environment, you're having catch-up calls with your team and direct reports on a regular basis. Make sure you schedule time to connect with them without a business agenda. So if that's you know, on a one-on-one basis, then it's a regular thing, weekly, just short with no specific agenda other than not talking about business, just to make sure that you know, you're keeping up to speed with them, how they're doing you know, in this new environment. On a more collective basis, virtual happy hour is something that some companies are using. You know, maybe you traditionally used to have pizza on the Friday afternoon, last Friday of every afternoon, once a month. Now you're not meeting each other, so let's make it 1 hour on a Friday collectively. Again, no business agenda, just trying to sharing and catching up and keeping those relationships. I think can be a good way to keep momentum and motivation in these times.
Yeah, it's very important. Thank you very much, Gordon. Thank you very much, everyone, today for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the debate. Maybe next time we will have maybe a glass of wine online, all of us. I prefer, of course, to meet everyone face to face during an event. We will be meeting the board 2 days, so we will discuss our next agenda. Cheers, Michel. We'll discuss about our next agenda, if we will resume our offline meeting for the Swiss National Day, maybe on the 1st of August, but we don't know that yet, and we have to follow the Korean government announcement. So thank you again for joining us today. Our next event will be held on the 23rd of July. I'm going for the flyer. It is, we will invite, it will be a joint event with the ECCK, and we will